Dr. Ben Carson grew up in Detroit, Michigan in the 1950s and 60s. His mother, who had only a third-grade education, raised him and his brother as a single parent after divorcing their father when Ben was 8 years old. Despite facing poverty and hardship, Carson's mother instilled in her sons the importance of education and hard work. She limited their TV watching and required them to read books and write reports, even though she herself was illiterate at the time. This emphasis on learning helped Carson go from the bottom of his class to the top within a year and a half. Carson attended Yale University and later went on to medical school, though he initially struggled and was advised to drop out. He realized he learned better from reading than lectures, so he adapted his study methods and went on to excel. He became a renowned pediatric neurosurgeon at Johns Hopkins Hospital. Though he grew up as a Democrat, Carson's views on issues like abortion led him to eventually align with the Republican Party. He ran for president in the 2016 Republican primary before dropping out and endorsing Donald Trump. Carson believes God chose Trump to help save America. He later served as Secretary of Housing and Urban Development in the Trump administration from 2017 to 2021. Carson is critical of the leftward shift in American politics and culture. He sees parallels between current trends and communist goals for undermining American society that were outlined decades ago. He believes there is a concerted effort by some to fundamentally change the country through tactics like controlling education, media, and undermining traditional family structures. On specific issues, Carson opposes abortion, considering it the taking of innocent life. He supports traditional marriage and family structures. He is skeptical of claims about systemic racism and believes emphasis on racial grievances is used to divide Americans. He advocates for school choice and reducing dependence on government assistance programs. Carson is highly critical of Vice President Kamala Harris, viewing her as a radical leftist who would move the country in a socialist direction if she became president. He believes the media will work to portray her positively despite her unpopularity as a presidential candidate. In contrast, Carson speaks very positively about Donald Trump, whom he has known personally for over a decade. He describes Trump as genuinely caring toward employees and others, despite his public persona. He believes Trump's business background and outsider status make him well-suited to disrupt the political establishment. As an African American who grew up in poverty and achieved great professional success, Carson rejects the notion that systemic racism prevents Black Americans from succeeding. He believes the bigger obstacles are negative messages that encourage victimhood mentality rather than personal responsibility. Carson points to his own life story as evidence that the American dream is still achievable through hard work. He credits his mother's emphasis on education and refusal to accept excuses as key to his success. He believes similar attitudes of self-reliance and rejecting victimhood are needed for others to overcome difficult circumstances. While acknowledging historical injustices, Carson is concerned that too much focus on racial grievances is counterproductive and divisive. He believes Americans should emphasize common humanity and shared values rather than racial differences. Carson sees the push for diversity and equity initiatives in institutions as often misguided. Carson is highly critical of mainstream media, believing most outlets push a leftist agenda rather than providing objective information. He sees coordinated messaging across outlets as evidence of collusion. He believes the media's demonization of political opponents, particularly Trump, has poisoned public discourse and even contributed to violence, like the recent assassination attempt. More broadly, Carson is concerned about cultural shifts away from traditional values, particularly in education. He believes many universities now indoctrinate students in anti-American ideologies rather than encouraging free inquiry and debate. He supports alternative educational options that maintain a more traditional curriculum and ethos. Carson has been married to his wife Candy for over 50 years. He credits their strong Christian faith as the foundation of their relationship, describing how they pray and read the Bible together daily. He emphasizes the importance of couples finding shared activities they enjoy, like playing pool in their case. As a doctor, he is concerned about declining physical health and fitness in America, particularly among men. He believes this is largely due to less physical labor and activity in modern life. He also worries about cultural shifts away from traditional family structures, viewing the nuclear family as ideal for child development. Carson was critical of aspects of the government's COVID-19 response, particularly vaccine mandates. As a physician, he believes proper medical ethics require informing patients of risks and benefits rather than coercion. He feels alternative treatments were unfairly dismissed and complications from vaccines downplayed. More broadly, Carson worries the pandemic response set concerning precedents for government overreach and censorship of dissenting views. He hopes there will be more transparency and willingness to consider diverse perspectives in future public health situations. From his time in the Trump administration, Carson came away concerned about the extent of what he calls the swamp or cesspool in Washington, entrenched interests resistant to reform. He believes this is why the political establishment is so opposed to outsiders like Trump. Carson is troubled by what he sees as threats to democracy, particularly around election integrity. He believes mail-in voting is vulnerable to fraud and supports reforms like France's ban on routine mail-in ballots. He feels lack of trust in elections risks making people cynical about democracy itself. More broadly, Carson worries about erosion of foundational American principles like free speech, religious liberty, and limited government. He sees the current political divide as fundamentally about those who want government by and for the people versus those who want government control. Throughout the interview, Carson emphasizes the importance of his Christian faith in shaping his worldview and giving him courage to speak out for his beliefs despite criticism. He encourages Americans to look beyond superficial differences and rediscover shared values and common humanity. Carson expresses cautious optimism that the country can overcome its current challenges if enough people reject divisive ideologies and recommit to foundational principles. He believes America's capacity for self-correction and renewal is one of its great strengths.